This video is going to be a little long. This person says weight loss has nothing to do with insulin resistance. This is a big fat lie. I had insulin resistance and prediabetes, and I still lost 20 kg. Weight loss is all calorie expenditure and diet. He's wrong. If he was right, every last one of the weight loss drugs on the market today would be focused on counting calories and exercise. They're not. They, on a base level, all do the same thing. They control your insulin. If what he is saying is true, type 1 diabetics, which type 1 diabetes usually starts from childhood. There are adults who develop type 1 diabetes, but it's not a lot. It primarily starts from childhood age. If you were to observe, this is just to say how powerful insulin is. If you were to observe a child who is a type 1 diabetic before they started giving that child insulin, what you will notice is that child was very skinny. That child is incapable of gaining any weight. The reason why the child can't gain weight is because that child, as a type 1 diabetic, cannot make insulin. Insulin tells your body what to do with the food that you consume. That child can eat any amount of food that child wants and will not gain 1 pound because that child is incapable of making the hormone insulin, which tells that child's body what to do with the food that that child eats. And if that child is not given insulin in the form of injections, that child will not make it to adulthood. Now, that same child, a year later, 2 years later, after that child is put on insulin, the same child that a year before, 2 years before, was really skinny, you notice that child has gained weight. Why? Because now the child has insulin being injected into its body. And now that child can now store some of that food as fat. That's why. That's the strength of insulin. Now, to my friends here, thing about insulin resistance not being a thing. Understand and remember, insulin tells your body what to do with the food that you eat. Type 1 diabetics don't make any insulin. They don't have an insulin resistance problem. They have a lack of insulin problem. But a person who is insulin resistant, that person has a too much insulin problem. A prediabetic has a too much insulin problem. A type 2 diabetic
43
has a too much insulin problem. Please excuse me. I'm at work and that was my radio. I am not stopping this video. I'm on a roll. So, a type 2 diabetic has a too much insulin problem, right? So, what is insulin resistance? Insulin resistance happens because you have chronically elevated insulin. And why do you have chronically elevated insulin? You have chronically elevated insulin because of what we eat, because of the American Standard Diet, because of the Western Standard Diet. That's why we have, which causes chronically elevated glucose, which then causes chronically elevated insulin, because insulin is what's used to control your sugar. And day after day, month after month, year after year of us eating the way that we do causes more and more insulin to have to be used to control our sugar. And then at some point in time, the cells in our bodies become resistant to insulin. And at the same time, because we have been using so much insulin to control the sugar, we become insulin resistant. Understand what I'm saying? So, if you are overweight, you are insulin resistant. Now, eat less and exercise more, which is what he's talking about. It will work for a short period of time. But guess what? It is not sustainable. Because eat less part of the eat less, exercise more part makes you hungry. And the exercise part of the eat less, exercise more part makes you very hungry. Understand what I'm saying? It is why it's not sustainable. If eat less, exercise more was sustainable, straight up, no BS, there will be no obese people in this here country of America. There will be no overweight people in this country because we have been doing eat less, exercise more for many years. It isn't sustainable. What is sustainable is controlling the hormone which tells our body what to do with the food we eat. How do you control the hormone? Intermittent fasting controls insulin. It controls insulin because it controls your sugar. Eating low carb controls insulin. Because when you eat low carb, you do not have insulin spikes. Why? Because you're not having sugar spikes. This guy doesn't know that. This guy thinks he's really, really smart, but this guy is not.